A lone sports car streaks through the neon-lit streets at midnight, engines screaming and tires fighting for grip. In the shadows of a Tokyo expressway and on the back roads of California alike, one name keeps emerging from the haze of tire smoke and adrenaline: Nissan. How did a Japanese automaker end up so deeply embedded in global street racing, drifting, and tuner culture? The answer is a decades-long story of innovation, passion, and the perfect cars arriving at the perfect time. What follows is a cinematic journey through mountain passes, highway battles, and underground meetups, tracing how Nissan's machines took over street culture in Japan, the United States, and beyond. Long before the drift corners and drag strips, Nissan was laying the groundwork for performance on the streets. In the late 1960s, Nissan, then using the Datsun name abroad, unveiled the Fairlady Z, known overseas as the Datsun 240Z. Debuting in 1969, the 240Z was an instant hit, offering sports car thrills comparable to European models, but at a fraction of the cost. With a smooth six-cylinder engine and sleek styling, the 240Z proved that an affordable Japanese car could deliver style and speed, becoming one of the most popular sports cars of the 1970s. This success signaled Nissan's commitment to building cars not just for commuting, but for driving excitement. Around the same time, another legend was brewing in Japan, the Skyline GT-R. Originally born under the Prince Motor Company and then adopted by Nissan, the Skyline GT-R first appeared in 1969 as a no-nonsense performance sedan and coupe. After a hiatus, Nissan relaunched the GT-R in 1989 with the R32 generation, a technological tour de force that would soon dominate on and off the track. Nicknamed Godzilla by racing journalists for its ruthless winning streak, the R32 GT-R packed a twin-turbo 2.6-liter engine, all-wheel drive, and advanced handling systems. It officially made 276 horsepower to abide by a gentleman's agreement, but in reality often produced more. The GT-R's instant fame in motorsport, including crushing rival supercars in touring races, planted the seeds of its street reputation. By the late 1980s and early 1990s, Nissan had a stable of performance thoroughbreds. The company unveiled cars like the Silvia, also known by chassis cheat codes like S13, S14, S15, and continued the Z car line into the modern era. These vehicles were introduced during Japan's economic boom when automakers were fiercely competing to blend speed with style. Nissan's Skyline GT-R and Silvia stood shoulder to shoulder with Toyota's Supras and Mazda's RX-7s as part of a golden generation of Japanese sports cars. Unbeknownst to Nissan, the stage was set for its cars to become the chariots of a burgeoning street racer movement. In the 1980s and 90s, Japanese enthusiasts took performance out of racetracks and onto public roads. A street racing subculture exploded, known as Hashiriya, street racers who claimed the cities, highways, and mountain passes at night. Some raced quarter-mile sprints between traffic lights. Others ran flat out on expressways, while the most devoted took to the touge, turning narrow mountain roads into personal racetracks. It was on those winding mountain passes that drifting was born. Instead of chasing grip, drivers began sliding their cars on purpose, balancing control and chaos through every corner. Popularized by legends like Keiichi Tsuchiya, drifting became a movement, and at the center of it all was the Nissan Silvia. The S13 Silvia and its cousin, the 180SX, quickly became the backbone of the drift scene. With rear-wheel drive, turbo power, and a price young enthusiasts could actually afford, these cars were everywhere as drifting exploded in the 1990s. Late at night, mountain parking lots filled with Silvias, 180SXs, and old Z cars, all getting ready for downhill runs. And it wasn't just drifting. The same chassis worked for grip racing and even straight line pulls. The Silvia became a true do-it-all platform, cementing Nissan's reputation as the brand that gave street racers both performance and potential. Meanwhile, on the highways, a different kind of battle was unfolding, less about finesse, more about raw speed. Late at night, Tokyo's Wangan Expressway became a secret battleground for high-speed racing. Small groups of drivers formed clubs and ran the long straights at terrifying speeds, often well past 200 kilometers per hour. They were called the Roulette Tribes because every run felt like a gamble. This scene later became legendary through stories of the Midnight Club and the Wangan Midnight Manga and anime. And at the center of it all were Nissan's fastest machines. Cars like the Skyline GT-R and the twin-turbo Fairlady Z became the weapons of choice, easily tuned for massive power and high-speed stability. With a few upgrades, some of these Nissans were pushing well over 400 horsepower, turning the highways into their domain. The Skyline GT-R, especially the R33, became almost inseparable from the Wangan scene. Officially rated at 280 horsepower, its twin-turbo engine was heavily detuned, and with just a boost tweak in tuning, many GT-Rs were pushing well over 400 horsepower. Combined with all-wheel drive and rock-solid stability, it gave street racers a huge advantage on the unpredictable expressways. Those midnight runs became iconic. GT-Rs disappearing into the darkness, red taillights glowing at full speed. Nissan's dominance in both racing and street culture turned the GT-R into a myth. The R32's domination in motorsport earned it the name Godzilla, and even older Fairlady Zs became legends through stories like the Devil Z. From mountain passes to highway straights, Nissan cars were at the heart of Japan's street racing identity. By the mid-1990s, the exploits of Japanese street racers and their beloved Nissans were no longer confined to Japan. A wave of media, from comic books to video games, began to carry the torch of JDM, Japanese domestic market car culture, across the globe. Japanese manga series like Initial D, which dramatized mountain touge battles, and Wangan Midnight, which immortalized highway racing, found enthusiastic audiences. These stories always gave cars a starring role. A Nissan might be cast as the underdog hero's ride or the formidable rival to beat. For example, in Initial D, while the hero drives a Toyota AE86, he faces off against numerous Nissans, Silvia's, Skylines, even a monstrous R32 GT-R throughout his journey. The personality and performance of each vehicle were part of the drama, inspiring readers and future racers alike. At the same time, an even more influential medium was putting Nissans into the imagination of young car fans worldwide: video games. In 1997, Sony's Gran Turismo hit the PlayStation console, offering an unprecedentedly realistic driving simulation. Gran Turismo introduced players, many of whom had never heard of these JDM legends, to a dream garage of Japanese performance cars. Suddenly, a teenager in Los Angeles or London could virtually drive a Nissan Skyline GT-R, a 300ZX, or a Silvia on famous racetracks. Gamers quickly discovered that the sleek, unknown coupe from Japan, the GT-R, was like a cheat code on wheels, easily outperforming many established sports cars in the game. The high power and all-wheel traction made it a favorite weapon in the virtual world, and a whole generation had their first taste of GT-R glory on a TV screen. Crucially, this virtual exposure translated into real-world demand. The way most Americans found out about the world-beating Nissan Skyline GT-R was from video games, one automotive writer noted. Enthusiasts who conquered races in Gran Turismo began clamoring for a chance to own the real thing. In the late 90s and early 2000s, a handful of specialty importers answered the call by bringing used Skylines into the US, skirting strict federal laws in the process. Nissan's street reputation was no longer an underground secret. It was going global. Video games weren't the only thing fueling the explosion. When the Fast and Furious hit theaters in 2001, tuner culture went mainstream overnight. Modified imports dominated the screen, and Nissan was front and center. Paul Walker's silver and blue Skyline GT-R in Too Fast, Too Furious became an instant icon, cementing the GT-R as a street legend for an entire generation. Around the same time, games like Need for Speed, Underground pushed the same energy, with Nissans like the 350Z and Skyline sitting at the top of every player's wish list. On screens and consoles, Nissan wasn't just part of the scene, it was often portrayed as the king of the streets. All of that exposure sparked a massive global interest in Japanese cars, especially Nissans. JDM tuning became part of everyday car culture, and suddenly meets from Los Angeles to London were packed with Silvias, 240S XS, 300Z XS, and Z cars. Enthusiasts chased the look and performance they'd seen in movies and games, importing parts straight from Japan and building their own versions of those street legends. Nissan didn't plan this takeover, it happened naturally. Through culture, stories, and passion, their cars became inseparable from the modern tuner scene. By the early 2000s, Japan's street racing influence had fully reached the United States. The import tuner scene exploded, especially among young enthusiasts, and Japanese sports cars quickly became the platforms everyone wanted. Nissan was right at the center of it. The Z car had already proven its appeal decades earlier with the 240Z, and that legacy carried on. In the 90s, Nissan officially sold cars like the twin-turbo 300 ZX in the US, turning heads with its looks and performance. And while Americans never got the Silvia by name, they did get something close, the Nissan 240SX. Affordable, rear-wheel drive, and easy to modify, it became the perfect blank canvas for a new generation of tuners. American enthusiasts quickly realized how special the Nissan 240SX really was. Both the S13 and S14 were cheap to buy, easy to modify, and backed by a massive aftermarket. The engine bay left plenty of room for swaps too, from turbocharged SR20D ETS to even Skyline RB engines, turning the 240SX into whatever builders wanted it to be. Before long, these cars were everywhere. Drift events, drag strips, street builds. The 240SX became the American version of the Silvia Nissan never sold. When drifting turned into a professional sport in the early 2000s, Nissan platforms dominated. The 240SX led the way, and later the 350Z carried that torch, even earning its own pop culture moment in Tokyo Drift. On screen and on track, Nissan cars were stealing the spotlight. Then there was the Skyline GT-R, the forbidden fruit. For years, American fans could only admire it from afar, locked out by the 25-year import rule that only made the R32, R33, and R34 more mythical. When a handful of Skylines slipped into the US through importers like Motorex, their appearances caused chaos at car shows. People crowded around them like celebrities, because to them they were. Once the 25-year rule finally opened the door in the 2010s, Skylines began arriving legally, and Nissan's presence in US car culture exploded. Today it's not unusual to see a GT-R or a right-hand drive Silvia parked alongside American muscle. What was once a niche had become mainstream. Nissan didn't just earn a place in car culture, it helped reshape it. So why did Nissan's cars shape street culture in a way brands like Ferrari or Porsche never could? It comes down to one word: accessibility. Nissans were affordable, easy to work on, and built to be modified. Cars like the Silvia and 240SX were everywhere. In the late 90s and early 2000s, you could buy one cheap wrench on it yourself and turn it into whatever you wanted. The parts were plentiful, swaps were straightforward, and the aftermarket exploded with options. More power, better handling, wild body kits. It was all within reach. Because so many people could actually own and build these cars, knowledge spread fast through forums, garages, and car meets. Nissan didn't just sell performance cars, they accidentally created a blank canvas. And that's why their cars didn't just participate in street culture, they defined it. The Skyline GT-R played a different role. It was more expensive, but it was engineered like a race car for the street. Tuners quickly learned that the RB26 engine could handle massive power, with many street builds pushing well beyond 400 horsepower, and some reaching 600 and beyond. Japanese tuning houses like HKS and Mines helped turn the GT-R into a high-speed weapon, and its all-wheel drive system meant that power actually reached the ground. That tunability made the GT-R legendary. Owners could slowly turn an already fast car into something capable of embarrassing supercars. And for those who couldn't get a GT-R, swapping its RB26 engine into other cars became a dream scenario, something pop culture even picked up on in Tokyo Drift. What made Nissan special, though, was that this mindset extended beyond its halo cars. Even everyday models like the 240SX, Sentra SER, and Maxima found their way into the scene. Nissan didn't just build one icon, it built an entire lineup that invited people to modify, experiment, and make the cars their own. Affordability didn't stop at the purchase price. Nissan's cars were durable, easy to maintain, and built in huge numbers, which kept parts cheap and easy to find. In the US, enthusiasts were constantly digging through junkyards, pulling usable parts from other Nissans and bolting them onto their own projects. That culture of swapping, reusing, and upgrading kept the scene accessible. Compared to rarer, more expensive rivals like the Supra or RX-7, Nissan simply had more cars on the street, and that numbers advantage helped cement its dominance in street culture. If you look at car culture today, Nissan's street-era influence is impossible to miss. For many enthusiasts, JDM still means Skylines, Silvias, and Z cars. The street racing scene in Japan has faded, but the romance of that era hasn't. Cars that were once pushed hard on mountain roads are now prized classics. And it's not just about value, it's about meaning. At meets, you'll see younger fans who never lived through that time, still wearing the logos and studying the history. Nissan understands this legacy. Through Nismo and heritage programs, the brand has embraced the credibility those cars earned naturally. Nissan didn't plan to take over street culture. They simply built the right cars, and the community turned them into legends.